Today I'm gonna do a review of the atrocity that is Vandal Hearts, one of the worst JRPGs of all time, like every single damn game Erick reviews in this damn channel. What? He's behind me, isn't he? Oh, damn. Back in the mid-90s, Konami saw the slow but steady rise of strategy RPGs. Fire Emblem and Shining Force were gaining terrain, as well as Tactics Ogre getting some recognition. So they wanted to create their own IP, their own series to compete against these giants in Japan. They felt, however, that the game needed to be a little bit different than all the others, so they came up with Vandal Hearts, with more mature and dark tones than the others, a non-anime art style, and, well, blood. Tons of it. The game earned the mature rating by the ESRB outside of Japan for its initial PlayStation release. Konami also ported the game to the Sega Saturn and Windows in 1997 and 1998, respectively. Both those versions stayed in Japan. So how did this tactical RPG fare across the ocean? So-so, not because of the initial mixed reviews, but because of a good lack of marketing. Besides, the game didn't have a lot of appeal to begin with some blaming the lack of anime style or the simplicity of the game. Over time though, it gained a cult classic status, and nowadays it is highly regarded, influential and well loved by fans and critics alike. It also aged really well. So is this game the masterpiece it set out to be? Let's find out. Ash Lambert is the leader of a platoon which is part of the security forces of the Republic of Ishtaria. He's 24 years old, so we got here another unusual JRPG protagonist that's an adult. He and his team get sent to investigate the disappearance of a general and end up discovering a corrupted plot against the Republic. Soon after, they find themselves turning mercenaries once the unspeakable truth comes out about the government and the people they were faithfully working for. The writing in this game is terrific, almost as dark and deep as the one in the legendary Tactics Ogre. It does fall short a bit in terms of narrative and character development simply because the game's length does not surpass the 20 hours mark. But in its defense, I can say that we get a rich layout of the lore, great dialogue, and a rock-solid development for the characters, despite being quite concrete as opposed to the lengthy elaborations of most other JRPGs. In other words, this game doesn't waste your time with meaningless chatter, slice-of-life bullshit, and gets to the point when it needs to. The graphics in Vandal Hearts are the product of Hiroshi Kiyomasu, who decided against the regular manga style of the 90s in exchange for a more unique style. Both the characters and the backgrounds are a bit ugly, but not necessarily in a bad sense. Perhaps this was done on purpose to give the game a more mature appeal without the cheesy distractions anime styles tend to offer. There's also the blood splatter animations, which gave the game more personality, but also a closer approach to its adult-oriented atmosphere. The backgrounds are three-dimensional, but the characters are still 2D sprites. I actually think the sprites and their animations are excellent, which is the biggest reason why the game aged so well. So the gameplay has you watching and reading dialogue scenes, going into a menu-based overworld after that, and moving from one area to the other. Like most strategy RPGs, its missions are based on completing maps, often with a plethora of objectives that remove the dull prerequisites of killing all enemies. The creativity for a 1996 game is astounding, as often you find a few unusual conditions to complete the map or progress with the story. It's also one of those with a player phase to move all of your characters and then an enemy phase. The view is isometric for the maps and the camera can be rotated, especially with the battle animations. Characters move on grids, but terrain matters, particularly when you have objects you can interact with, such as barriers or rocks you need to destroy or move. As you've been seeing though, combat animations are on screen without going to a different one like in Fire Emblem, and obviously, characters will learn native skills and regular spells as the game progresses. Now, RNG isn't that big of a deal here, as accuracy is 8 out of 10 times guaranteed, but it can be frustrating to see an important attack miss, and it's also one of those with counter attacks. For every melee attack, an ally or enemy will counter. The game has no difficulty settings and it's challenging, but not as hardcore as other titles in the genre. Still, what makes the game difficult is the combination of the mission objectives, the terrain, and the amount of damage your enemies do to you. There is no permadeath whatsoever, thankfully. If characters die, they just retreat, but there's a penalty to this. You lose money! If someone retreats, a chunk of money will be lost at the end of the mission. Yikes! Because of course, money is used to buy items, which are scarce, and characters can only equip just a few per mission. You also use it for equipment, which you can buy at towns in the overworld menu. In these towns, you can also go to the pub to talk briefly to NPCs, hence discovering a bit more of the lore in the world. But there's also a dojo, which is where the class system comes into play. It's kinda like in Fire Emblem, but without the need of a special item. With enough experience, anyone can advance to a better type of the same class or to a new branch which is similar to their original class. It's not like a swordsman can become a mage or something like that, it's not a job system, okay? So here is where the triangle system gets involved. One class is stronger to one, but weak to another, which is typical for strategy RPGs of this era. So one class plus certain terrain effects means the advantage, but also the disadvantage in battle, keep that in mind. The music in this game was done by 4 different composers, including Miki Higashino, who's known for the first Suikoden games. Nonetheless, I never felt the soundtrack here was as outstanding as in those other JRPGs. It's good, with some really memorable themes, but let's face it, the rest of the music is extremely forgettable. Now, you should know that the Sega Saturn version is an enhanced port and has been fan-translated for a while. It included a new opening sequence, animated cutscenes, new weapons, skills, and spells, as well as a couple of different endings. The graphics are obviously and notoriously superior to the PS1 version, as you can see in this comparison. If you're gonna play this game, I just have to recommend this Saturn translation over the PS1 original, but know that the latter is still excellent if you can't or won't play the Saturn port. I know nothing about the Windows version, sorry, but I'm sure someone in the comments will let you know. Overall, this is not quite the masterpiece it set out to be, but it's pretty darn close. I think it lacked in the graphics and music department, as well as the short length, but it's also thanks to that it feels like a breath of fresh air after playing a longer and more hardcore title out there. Vandal Hearts is still a strongly recommended RPG I believe everybody should play.